Hey, it's Paul. It's Monday, Memorial Day, and 2023. And I wanted to comment this evening. Um, for some time, my YouTube channel was under periodic attack. Now, I've taken a few steps that seem to have helped in that regard, and so I'm going to try to reissue a video, which was one of many videos that I'm going to go into all the details, but it disappeared from my YouTube channel, and that was I did maybe 2 or 3 videos in which I'd talked about Thomas Steenburg, the great Sasquatch researcher from Canada, and his work in the Sasquatch field. And Thomas Steenburg is the author of a number of books, including this one here, The Sasquatch in Alberta, by Thomas Steenburg. There's Mr. Steenburg. And it's a great book. I've got that book, and I've read several of Thomas's other books. Thomas N. Steenburg, Thomas Nelson Steenburg. And I strongly recommend this particular book, The Sasquatch in Alberta, Bigfoot in Wild Rose Country. Very good book indeed. It's from, let's see here. It's from, if you just do a search on it, you'll find it. It's, I had trouble with this before trying to find that publisher. Hancock House Publishers Limited of Surrey, British Columbia. But and he wrote a couple other Sasquatch books that I've read, and he's the author of a total of 5 books. I think 2 of them he co-authored with another fellow whose name's escaping me right now. But Thomas Steenburg, is the Sasquatch researcher that is still with us that I have the highest regard for. And there's certainly others that I have a high regard for. But Thomas would be numero uno in that regard. And certainly doesn't take a back seat to any of the 4 horsemen. Rennie DeHinden, John Green, Grover Krantz, and I think the still living Peter Byrne. Okay, I don't think that Thomas in any way takes a backseat to any of them in terms of the rigor of his research, his commitment to an absolute objective analysis of every report. He simply doesn't have quite the fame that those men achieved, for whatever reason. But I have tremendous respect for Thomas. I strongly recommend this, his most recent book. It's a reissue of a 1989 book that he'd written. This came out in about 2015 or 2016, 17, somewhere in there. The Sasquatch in Alberta, Bigfoot in Wild Rose Country. Again, by Thomas Steenburg. Again, there's Mr. Steenburg. Probably a few years ago out in the field. And there's Mr. Steenburg with his omnipresent pipe. Now, I used to smoke a pipe, and I've always enjoyed a pipe. In more recent years, I've graduated almost exclusively to cigarettes. But to his credit, I think Thomas still smokes a pipe, which is probably a little better for you in some ways, a little worse in others. Been a while since I've had tip tongue. But Thomas is one of the greats, and Bill Basson, who I'd mentioned the other day in some remarks, is a guy that I think is cut more or less from that same type of cloth. I don't know how well Thomas and Mr. Basson know each other, but I think in general they're kindred spirits. I think Thomas, though, is probably a little quicker than Bill is to maybe call some folks out on some stuff that, somebody like Bill may suspect, Thomas will just come right out and say that he suspects, strongly that somebody, or just knows that somebody isn't being completely honest about something, or that they just were wrong in their analysis. So that's one of the things I've always liked about Thomas Steenburg is the willingness, the readiness of Thomas to come right out and say that he thinks a certain Sasquatch researcher just isn't up to standard, And if you go over to Thomas has a I think Thomas Steenburg has a YouTube channel. And he's also with a bunch, a group, I can't think of their name right now, but Thomas Steenburg, if you do a Google search for Thomas Steenburg, a YouTube search for Thomas Steenburg, you'll find Thomas Steenburg's YouTube channel. I strongly recommend Thomas's YouTube channel. I wish Thomas would do more of the interviews out in the field that he was doing. I think some of that got put on hiatus because of the COVID stuff, and but I think he's probably going to start getting back out in the field again more than he has been. I'm sure he's been out in the field, but he's been doing some stuff with some other fellows in a kind of a studio setting where he's over at his place, and the guy that's conducting the interview is in his place, and then maybe one or two other guests are in their respective places, and they're speaking remote from one another over a computer. And so you have kind of a quad screen there, or three screens, But Thomas, he has a number of videos where he and some of his colleagues are out in the field. They're over at Thomas Steenburg's YouTube site, and it's outstanding stuff. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to get into the field with Thomas. I have a lot of commitments here, but I'd love to. He really is my very favorite Sasquatch researcher, and I say that that's not easy for me to say, because there's certainly some other Sasquatch researchers I have a lot of esteem for and affection for, but I love to get out in the field with Thomas. I love to get up in South BC. Just a second here, I've got what's that again? I've got the phone. Okay, I'm making a video. Yeah, I'll be in the bathroom. You betcha. But anyway, if I get a chance to get up to Canada again, I'd love to get up there and do some research with Thomas. Could be some years before that'll be possible. But again, Thomas Steenburg's YouTube site is outstanding. And I strongly recommend his books. A number of his books I've read, I think virtually all of them. And this one here, it's right here on my desk. It's been here for some years. I've read all of it several times. The Sasquatch in Alberta. Bigfoot in Wild Rose Country. Thomas Steenburg. There's Mr. Steenburg again. And again, I can't overemphasize that he's probably the very best Sasquatch researcher today. He's not as heralded as some other Sasquatch researchers, because he doesn't go out and say, well, no, that print may very well have been Sasquatch. If he doesn't think it's a Sasquatch, he'll say, I think that's a melted lynx track or a faked track. If he hears a certain type of noise and later on he sees a coyote producing it, he'll say that, even if that blows up the Puyallup recordings and some of the other ones. And so there are a lot of folks out there that are in, Sasquatch religion land, that don't like Thomas. They have an animosity towards him because, he's blowing up some orthodoxies out there. But I have, Thomas's standard is the most rigorous and exacting standard in Bigfootery. Sasquatchery, as Thomas would call it.